Merkel Media.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Well, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Daylight NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin, Odyssey, Band.video, Vigilante.tv, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey, if you like the show, you can share it, you can rate it. Give me 5 stars if you think I've earned it. Also, thanks to the sponsors. My goodness, we couldn't do the show without them. C60 Purple Power is making the best batch of C60 out there. It's hundreds of times more efficient and as an antioxidant than anything else known to man. They won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the C60 molecule back in the late 80s. It's kind of a big deal. It'll help your body lift the oxidation burden off of your cells. It helps you be more efficient with your energy, create energy. It does all kinds of things. I'll tell you what, the best place to go to find out more about it is their website, shopc60.com. Take a look, see what you think. Promo code MACRO on your way out to save yourself some money. Might as well do that. Ken, the scientist, has been on a few times to talk about his background and how he came about making this product. It was very efficient, very helpful for guys like him, nuclear physicists working with dangerous materials. Funny thing is, there aren't a lot of old guys in that industry. They all wind up dying. But if you've got C60 as an option, it can help you to keep your cells healthy. And look, I'll tell you what, we need it. We'll take it. So go to shopc60.com, see what you think, read up about it, promo code MACRO on your way out. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, protect, or mitigate any disease. That's what we have to say, so we say it. And also thanks to Tim, James, and the crew over at Chemical Free Body. They're making vitamins that actually work. Imagine that. What a novel concept. I take Green 85 every single day and have been for over 3 years. I feel fantastic. I listen, I don't eat enough vegetables. And so I feel like I've got to do something, right? And it's a pretty easy thing to do. It takes me about all of 3-4 minutes to make it, drink it, and be done with it. So it's not for, it doesn't take up much time on your schedule. It's just, are you ready to take control of your health? Nobody else is going to do it except you. So it's going to have to be up to you. If you've made the decision, okay, I'm tired of this, tired of feeling bad, I've got to do something. We're being poisoned by the food manufacturing industry, as we know. Take a look at Chemical Free Body. Find out, just listen to Tim's story. He saved his life by changing his diet. You can do the same thing too. ChemicalFreeBody.com, promo code MACRO. Check it out. Well, I'll tell you, I got to thank, I don't normally take requests on topics, but I got to shout out to Verbal, who yeah, I know I know where the name came from. I've seen Usual Suspects too, but he said, have you checked out the Wallenberg family before? Have you heard of these lunatics? And I had to admit, no, I didn't. I'd never heard of them. Listen, sometimes these deep state families are pretty good at keeping themselves, off the radar. And the Wallenbergs have done that. They are a Swedish family. They are, I mean, they put the deep in deep state, man. They are fully into it. And it's amazing to me that I could be doing what I do and writing about what I write about and interested in these secret societies and these globalist organizations and still have never heard of this group before, but I have now. So sometimes, this is a Swedish family and they don't really want you to know a ton about what they're doing, but in their case, they're so big and so predominant in that area that it's almost impossible if you're Swedish to not know who they are. I've never been to Sweden, so maybe that's part of it. And I would love to go. I'm not eating the fish. I'm just telling you right off the bat. I would love to go and check it out. So, this is a family, the Wallenberg family is virtually unknown in the US, but deep state to their core. And once we get through this episode, I think you may feel the same way I feel about this, which is now that I know, now that I have this name in my head, now that I've got another dot, something tells me I'll be connecting them to other dots in the future. And when you hear who these people are in business with, and first of all, the businesses that they run, and then the ancillary businesses that they're involved in, and the globalist business that they're in, the New World Order business, you're going to go, okay, these people have to be on my radar. So let's do this. Let's take a little tour about and find out what we can about the old Wallenberg family out of Sweden, because this group is dangerous. Boy, I'll tell you. And I don't know what's scarier, if everybody knows that you're super dangerous or if nobody knows. Because the thing that keeps, we learn about this with the Fabian socialists, the wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, there's some value in people not knowing who you are, right? I mean, it's one thing to be the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and Bill Gates, and everybody knows who those people are, right? And if they're up to no good, and they are, it's easy to kind of track it and follow them and see. But the people that don't want you to know who they are and what they have and what they're running, ooh, boy. Those people scare me. It's like in a fight situation, right? You're at a bar, let's say you're at a bar and you're getting in, there's an altercation that's about to break out. The guy that's hooting and hollering, I'll fuck you, I'll kick your, I'll beat your, that guy doesn't scare me. It's the guy that's quietly like, okay, you want to fight? And he doesn't have anything to say. He just starts taking his watch off. That's the guy you got to worry about, right? That's the Wallenbergs, as far as I'm concerned. They are not making a lot of noise intentionally so that you don't really know who they are. But when you own as much as they own, good luck keeping this a secret. So I think what they've done is they've regionalized it. People in the Scandinavian countries more than likely know who they are. People in Sweden definitely know who they are. All you in Sweden listening to this, you're going to be like, what took you so long, pal? To get on this. Hey, you come to the information when you come to the information, So I'm here and let's do it. So they're bankers. Of course they're bankers. I'm still looking for a good banker. I'm still looking for a banking family that's like, we're just trying to help the world. I'll let you know if I ever find one, because one of the common denominators with these intergenerational scumbaggery families is that they're always into banking. You have to be, right? It's a scam. We know that. It makes you insanely wealthy. You get yourself into this Rothschild sort of situation where you're saying things like, I care not who makes the laws, as long as I make the money, or whatever that statement was, that sort of quote that they use. So you understand that if you run the banks, man, it's like, good luck telling these people what to do. And then you use that banking dynasty to branch out into other things. I also don't know of too many families that run banking dynasties that just do banking. They inevitably get into other things, probably because they're sitting on so much money that they're like, well, what can we do? Well, in the case of the Wallenbergs, they're major players in corporations, in manufacturing, in all kinds of things, really. In telecom, they own Ericsson Telecom. Well, when I say own, I mean, it's a publicly traded company, but they control it. Let's just put it that way. So you can own Ericsson stock too. Doesn't mean you own it, but in their case, they own it, essentially. Let's just say that. They control it. They most definitely do. And Ericsson is a multinational telecom business. So it's not like you own some obscure telephone service in some weird part, some weird region of Sweden. Like, no. This is a global company and traded on the New York Stock Exchange and all that stuff. So to run that is already, I mean, automatically, just if that was the only thing you had, is if you ran Ericsson, you'd be in a position of power, you'd be filthy rich, and you would understand the value of information, which of course this family does, but it's more than just that. I mean, if it was just Ericsson, that would be plenty, but they own the company called Electrolux. You've heard of them. They make home appliances. They're the second biggest home appliance manufacturer in the world too. Electrolux. Okay. They own a bunch of boring, but super important industrial tools companies. They make the machines that make the parts that are needed for everything. So it's not like glamorous work, but it's the type of stuff that never really goes out of style, and you always need it. And it's not flashy, but it's consistent. And that's what they do. They're involved in that. It's a company that they run called Atlas Copco, and that's sort of the main component of this industrial manufacturing industry that they've dominated it. They own airlines. They own an airline called SAS, and it goes on and on and on and on. But when you take a look at it and you say, all right, well, let's just give it to me in terms of that I can understand. Okay, when you say this family like is super well known in Sweden, define that. All right, well, when I say that the Wallenbergs control Sweden, they are responsible for 40% of the Swedish economy. 40%. Okay, think about that for a second. If you are responsible for 40% of the revenue of a country, I don't care what country it is, pick some obscure Burkina Faso, right? Some obscure African country. I don't give a shit. If you and your family are responsible for 40% of the revenue of that country, you're important. You're needed. You actually get yourself into a place where you are so important that you almost can't delink from the government itself. We talk about fascism. Antifa's super concerned with fascism, though most of them don't even know how to define it. But what about corporatism? Okay, fascism is the blending of big business and the state for the benefit of the state. Corporatism is the same thing, except for the benefit of big business. How would you define the Wallenbergs then? If they're responsible for 40% of the Swedish economy, is that fascism? Is that corporatism? Who cares, really? At that point, I would suggest that sometimes that relationship benefits the family and sometimes that relationship benefits the state. Maybe both. There's a possibility it could benefit them both at the same time. The state decides we need to increase our, I don't know, surveillance technology, and they hire Ericsson. You know what I mean? So, or we need to build more Navy ships for the Swedish Navy. And in order to do so, we go to the naval yard, and that naval yard is using all of these industrial tools that Atlas Copco makes. And so, like, again, more money is just flowing to them. So you are in a situation with Sweden where, I mean, I don't even know how to put this in terms of like that Americans would understand. Let's just say this. We know that BlackRock has $10 trillion of assets, right? And that the US economy is about 25 trillion a year, right? That's 40%. It'd be like if BlackRock was responsible for that 10 trillion every single year. You know what I mean? And it was like, we already see the unholy relationship between the United States government and BlackRock. Imagine if BlackRock wasn't just sitting on a combined assets of 10 trillion, but had 10 trillion coming in every single year in revenue. Now, not all profits, of course, but still, you would, you know, we already can't really extricate ourselves from the relationship that BlackRock has with our government. Think if it was even bigger. So that's kind of the relationship here. Now, of course, Sweden is not the United States, but it's not nothing either. We are talking about Sweden, right? They have a variety of industries. They've been, you know, they stayed out of World War II for the most part. They were neutral, so they didn't get pulverized in the 40s and turned into ashes and have to rebuild like a lot of these other places did. So, you know, so they're a player. You know, they're a player in global affairs, and to have a country that is a player like that, and you know, they're going to be coming into NATO. We've heard that sometime next year. So that's something to keep your eyes on. So again, this is a big deal. This is not an obscure African country to have 40% of the revenue from. This is Sweden. This is a big one. And so, you know, we wonder about this. We wonder about how you know, when the Swedish government is talking about something, the question is, how much of that is the Wallenbergs actually talking through them? So are they who's the puppet here? Who's the puppet masters in this? I would suggest this is a mutually parasitic relationship, that in this case, they probably both need each other. That the government needs this family to continue to do what they're doing and not out them or put them out of business. I mean, regime change the Swedish government would probably be easy to do if you were the Wallenberg family. I mean, you would just make it happen. And when we get a little bit deeper into who these people are, you will understand that regime change is most definitely on the table. Okay? Because these are the guys that do it. This family. And we'll get into that. In fact, well, fuck it. Let's get into it now, because I think it's important to have an idea of who. Okay, we mentioned the family itself, but let's escape from mere generalizations. Okay, let's start naming names. Let's talk about Marcus Wallenberg Jr. This guy ran the family for 3 decades. Okay, and he has one of the scariest resumes around. I mean, when you hear this, you're gonna go, you're gonna feel kind of like I did, which is like, how did I not see this guy? How did I not know this guy? You know, 22 times he's been an attendee at Bilderberg. 22 times. Okay. He's been to Bilderberg so many times that they wound up putting him on the steering committee. And now the steering committee is the group inside of, it's a group inside of a group. It's the group inside of Bilderberg that gets to pick the guest list for it. So this is like knowing the guy, the bouncer standing in front of the hottest club in town with the clipboard, and Marcus Wallenberg Jr. is the guy with the clipboard. So a good guy to know. He's the guy that can get you into the club. Now, if you want to get into this club, I don't want to get into the Bilderberg club, but for the globalist people that are on the come up and they think that they want to be part of this, this group of nefarious henchmen that get together every year in Davos and talk about, or the World Economic Forum group. But those guys, and also if you want to be part of Bilderberg, you're going to need to know Marcus Wallenberg Jr. if you want to get invited, because he's on the steering committee. He's part of this group. Now, he's not the only one, of course, but he's part of the group that sort of talks about who they want to bring into these things. Now, when I say that that the Swedish government, would want to stay on good terms with the Wallenbergs so they don't get regime changed, I'm not kidding about that. I think it's important to know that Marcus Wallenberg Jr. used to run the Swedish Gladio units, the stay-behind units of Gladio that we talked about with NATO. They weren't limited to Western Europe and in France and Italy and in Belgium and places like that. I mean, they were in Scandinavia as well. And the people, the Gladio units that were operating in Sweden were under the control of Marcus Wallenberg Jr. Now there's a bunch of these guys. There's the senior, there's junior, there's the third. We'll get to him in a minute, but I want you to just envision this scenario. We've talked about it. If you listen to the FEMA episode, we talked about Rex 84 and we talked about Ollie North. If you remember him, Ollie North, Iran Contra. Well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, if you remember when the wheels were falling off Iran Contra, the word on the street is that Ollie North put a hit out on Olof Palme, who is the two-time Swedish prime minister, who was running his mouth about Iran Contra. And when you want to whack the former prime minister of Sweden, it's not like, this isn't like just some mafia hit where you catch some guy coming out of a steakhouse getting into his Cadillac. We're talking about the former prime minister. So when Ollie North makes the decision and makes the phone call to get Olof Palme whacked, he calls Marcus Wallenberg Jr. That's who does it. Maybe not him personally, but that's who arranges it. Okay. So I think it's important to realize that, he did turn up dead, assassinated, shot, and the whole thing. It was a hit, and it was a hit carried out by the Wallenbergs at the behest of the United States government. So again, we get into a very murky area where there's some deep state actors that are that are in charge here, and you start to come to a realization, I don't blame them for not wanting their names out there, right? You know who Ollie North is, but you don't really want, if you're the assassination squad, if you're the Operation Gladio leave behind team, and what you specialize in as Operation Gladio is to make sure that you specialize in political surveillance and assassinations, and that's kind of like on your resume. Well, when your former prime minister is starting to run his mouth, don't be surprised if you get a phone call from Ollie North saying you need to make this problem go away, and like immediately, okay? And then it's gone. It's taken care of. So this is how it gets done. Let's not fool ourselves. He's a there's 3 generations of Wallenbergs that are at Bilderberg right now. So or I shouldn't say right now, over the course of the last couple of decades, there have been 3 generations. There's a new batch that have just come in, and that should be no surprise. So he's been there from the beginning. So the Wallenbergs really were good friends with Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, right? He's Prince Bernhard started Bilderberg, okay? And one of his closest friends was Marcus Wallenberg Sr., the dad, right? And so they were all connected. Wallenberg Jr. is now involved, and he becomes tight with this group as well. And if you know anything about Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, it ain't good, right? I mean, you pick your horrible thing you want to attribute to them. Child trafficking, people going missing, you name it. They're in it. Okay. This is the House of Orange. This is a dangerous group. Okay. So Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands starts Bilderberg, and we all know about Bilderberg. But he started another club as well that we've talked about in the past. He started the World Wildlife Fund. You remember that? The WWF. Before it was wrestling, it used to be the World Wildlife Fund, and then the World Wrestling Federation came into being, and then there was a lawsuit, and the wrestling had to change their name to WWE, because it was infringing on WWF. The original WWF is the World Wildlife Fund. And you go, oh yeah, I know that logo. It's the panda logo, right? Yes, it is. And if you think that this NGO charity is out there saving the pandas, I assure you they're not. And if your sweet grandmother is watching daytime television, writing checks to World Wildlife Fund because she thinks that she's going to save that skinny polar bear that's floating away on a little ice sheet, please have a conversation with your grandma. Your grandmother would be better off donating money to the WWE. You know what I mean? Like, she'd be better off giving money directly to Hulk Hogan himself. Because if you give it to the WWF, let me tell you who it's going to, okay? Prince Bernhard started that with Prince Philip, okay? Ex-Nazi, high-ranking Nazi, Prince Philip, married to Queen Lizard Breath, who recently died. Prince Philip, who said, when I die, I want to come back as a deadly virus to wipe out the population of humanity. This fucking guy, okay? He's the co-founder of the WWF, okay? Now, the reason why I mentioned this is because at the same time they started the WWF, they started something else. Nobody really talks about this group. It's called the 1001 Club. And the 1001 Club came from an idea that Prince Bernhard had. And he said, I want to invite 1,000 of my most influential friends to donate and invest in this endowment, the endowment of the newly formed World Wildlife Fund. So think of it like this. You've got the WWF World Wildlife Fund. We're going to save the whales and all that stuff. It's a cover story. It's bullshit. They're not doing any of that. It's a globalist depopulation think tank, just so you know. I mean, it doesn't go out in the brochures like that, but that's what it is when you kind of dig a little bit deeper, like a lot of these charities. So the WWF is brought into existence. Then the funding mechanism for the WWF is the 1001 Club. Now, the name of it goes that Prince Bernhard invited 1,000 influential people plus himself, making it 1,001 people. So it's the 1001 Club. And, this is so the WWF it's just greenwashing. It's like it's an operation that's providing them like political cover. It allows them to sell this green agenda. You're going to hear a lot about how climate change is killing all the animals, and the WWF will be behind that. And you'll see a bunch of sad infomercials. And please, won't you donate money to this group? Don't donate money to WWF. Take your money out in your on your sidewalk and put lighter fluid and light it on fire before you send it to these lunatics, because they will most definitely use it against you at some point. And so this group, this 1001 Club, springs into existence as a funding mechanism. And so they go out and they start recruiting people. Well, the first people that they brought in were the Wallenberg family. Okay. Immediately. They're in the first batch. Okay. Because they're connected, because they're best friends with Prince Bernhard, and family friends forever, have been, will be, multi-generational Wallenbergs at Bilderberg, basically a lifetime pass for them, essentially. But this 1001 Club, it gets no play. And by the way, shout out to WikiSpooks again, because they do work on this. They'll have information about that. This is and others too. There's a couple. There's a really great place that I go, isgp-studies.com. International. It's the Institute for the Study of Globalization and Covert Politics. If you go there and look up some of these things, you'll get real good information. It's not going to show up in your search engine, but that's a place to go. So what you find is that you go, well, okay, fine. These two guys are parts of the 1001 Club. Anybody else that I would know? Yeah, you'd know the rest. So besides Peter and Marcus Wallenberg, which is the third generation of Wallenbergs, and besides Marcus Wallenberg Jr. and Marcus Wallenberg Sr., so basically the whole family is a member of this. We also have David Rockefeller. He's a member. Henry Ford, he was a member. Lord Mountbatten, who was I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Lord Mountbatten and Jimmy Savile were really good friends. I'll just leave it at that. You can sort of fill in the blanks. Gianni Agnelli is part of this. He's a intergenerational Italian banking family. We've got Rothschilds. Their family is a member of the 1001 Club. The Safra family. I remember years ago in Monaco that one of the members of the Safra family got burned up in his house, then his place there. Again, intergenerational banking families out of the Middle East. I want to say like Syria, maybe. Juan Carlo of Spain, he's there. Lou Wasserman, who basically built Hollywood, he's there. He's a member. Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong was a Canadian scumbag who was deeply involved in the United Nations. He's the guy that he was the driving force behind climate change and all that stuff. He was involved in this committee. Conrad Black, Robert McNamara, a lot of Zionists in the list, a lot of like Northern European intergenerational banking families in this. It's kind of got like a committee of 300 feel to it. A lot of the same overlap. You know, we talk about the Venn diagram of criminality. A lot of overlap between some of those guys. So again, there's no rule that says you have to pick one of these clubs. You can be a member of CFR and Bilderberg and World Economic Forum and 1001 Club and all these things. And a lot of these guys are. You'll see the same people over and over again. So, but I mention this in relation to the Wallenbergs because I think it's important for us to understand that as we make this move into climate change, everybody's going to die. There's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We understand that is all horse shit. Okay. We know this. It's provable. It's in all their writings, but this is part of the group that's going to be behind the scenes, pushing it. Definitely financing it 100% and getting it out into the world through a variety of methods. And part of this is, listen, if you've got guys that are there, if you've got a guy who is part of Bilderberg from day one, part of Bilderberg, who's also part of the World Wildlife Fund, climate change, who's also part of the 1001 Club, the funding mechanism for the World Wildlife Fund that's going to go on and push climate change. And that person also happens to control 40% of the Swedish economy, then you've got a lot of money sitting out there that could be used for this. It's going to be used for a variety of things, but one of the avenues that they're going to spend this money on is pushing the climate change narrative because it does so many things for them. It allows them to, hell, they're in the home appliance business. You know what I mean? They're going to make it so that you got to buy brand new appliances. They're in the airline industry. I don't know how that's going to work for them, but it's going to be weird, right? But they're going to be involved in making sure that Sweden is on board with this, right? It'd be no surprise to see that Sweden is one of the first people to adopt some draconian climate change policies, because if the Wallenbergs want it that way, then that's the way it'll be. And I'm not even saying that the Swedish government would even push back all that much. And frankly, can they at this point? Probably not. You know, because those government officials come and go, but the Wallenbergs will still be there, right? And they run the show. So what else are these people involved in? Well, Marcus Wallenberg Jr., the guy who I told you has this really horrible resume of Bilderberg and 1001 Club and World Economic Forum and all that. He's also the chairman of the Federation of Swedish Industries. So, I don't know exactly what. You're sort of unofficially that anyway. If you run 40% of the country's economy, you might as well be the chairman as well. But he is officially. He's the chairman of the Research Institute of Industrial Economics and has been for a quarter of a century. And he's the son of Peter Wallenberg, as well as two of, let me rephrase that. His son, Marcus Wallenberg Jr.'s son, is a guy named Peter Wallenberg. And and there's Marcus the third, and there's Jacob. They're all Bilderberg members. And so, when you run a business like that, that's responsible for 40% of the economy, you have a tremendous amount of power. But, at some point, you got to replace the CEO. The guy can't run it forever. But when you have children that you groom to take this over, then you can extend this dynasty theoretically in perpetuity. As long as you continue to have people, as long as you continue to have children that are competent and can be put in a position to run the family dynasty moving forward, then I guess there is a possibility that you could stay in business for a very, very long time. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the third helping of Marcus Wallenberg, because there's the third one. Now, he doesn't go by the third. He doesn't go by any of that. He just goes by Marcus Wallenberg. So it's kind of confusing when you look into it and you go, is this the new guy? Is this the original? Is this the grandfather? No, this is the guy that was born in 1956. Okay, so he's the new guy. He's the third generation guy. He's into all the same old shit as his old man. He's there. It's not like he decided to go get into computers or anything like that. No, they're still doing the same stuff. They're into banking, industrial production. They're he's still running Electrolux. He's still running Ericsson, running on the boards, and maybe not running the day-to-day operations of these companies, but has such a huge stake in them that essentially running them, from afar, in a way that like David Rockefeller's or John D. Rockefeller ran the Standard Oil empire. Was he in the office making all the decisions every single day for every one of the things that Standard Oil did? No, probably not. But he put the people in place that were running it. So I assume that as these Wallenbergs continue their, to hold assets and hold these, interests in these companies, that just kind of passes down along with, to their children, and on it goes. So this third Marcus Wallenberg, he's also on the steering committee of Bilderberg, just like his dad. So his dad gave him the clipboard. Now he's in charge of the guest list for the club. And so when this guy was coming up, he was born in 56. His resume is what you would expect if you were grooming somebody to be, to take over a deep state position like this. So he first started working at Citibank, kind of out of college, you get the job at Citibank. Then moved to Deutsche Bank. Then moved to Warburg. He's working there. Then back to Citicorp, which is sort of like the main, sort of like the holding, the bigger version of Citibank. And it ended up with him running the family bank, which is SEB Group. So that's the main bank in Sweden that this family controls. So again, they want to make sure that he's qualified to run these banks. So he does have a track record being involved in banking, but he was always slated to run this bank at some point, unless he was, completely incompetent, like a Hunter Biden type, or somebody that's just too fucked up to be in a position of power. In this guy's case, he did the proper channels, went through all the schooling and worked at all the major banks that would put him in a position to then run this. And, he was the president and CEO of the Wallenberg family investment vehicle from the late 90s to like in 2005. So it's one thing, like that's a company in and of itself, is managing the family's holdings, so you get into a group where you're, it's not just an individual running of a bank, it's running the dynasty itself. So he's the chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce. So think about it this way. There's a chamber of commerce in your city. If you're in America, really anywhere, I think probably, but there's some version of a chamber of commerce. And then you might find something that's a little bit bigger. It's like the county level. And then maybe even the state level, like you could be the head of the California Chamber of Commerce, right? And that'd be a big deal. And then you would move up to a position, if you were really aspirational. You could be, say, the head of the national Chamber of Commerce. Like you could be the head of the Chamber of Commerce for the United States. That'd be so powerful. Marcus Wallenberg is the chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce. So he's the head of all of the chambers of commerce around the world. Okay. So if there's some question about, well, is he really that connected? Yeah, he goes to Bilderberg all the time. And yeah, a lot of people go to Bilderberg. How deep is he connected in business? The Chamber of Commerce that you work for, or you're a member of, or you belong to, or your business belongs to, if you take that all the way up the proverbial pyramid and get to the top, to the International Chamber of Commerce, you'll find that he's running that. So pretty connected. Okay. It's a good place to be if you want to understand business, you want to see what's coming down the line, if you want to understand, or if you want to impose draconian measures that put small and medium-sized businesses out of business and close them due to, a virus with a 99.98% survivability rate, who would be in a position to mandate something like that? Well, it could very well be Marcus Wallenberg. Okay, it could be. I don't know exactly the amount of authority he would have over that, but you could definitely envision a scenario in which he could start the conversation. Hey, listen, we got to consider closing these stores, right? We got to keep all these small and medium-sized businesses are super spreader, locations, vectors for spreading this virus. Of course, not the companies he runs, of course, the big multinational business, they're fine, right? Go to Home Depot. Oh, we got to close this local hardware store. We don't want anyone to die from COVID in this, in Bob's Lumber down the street, right? But Home Depot's open, right? So this is kind of, this is who he is. This is what he does. He's the vice chairman of the Institute of International Finance. Again, this sounds like like Institute of International Finance. You want to go with me to the meeting for the Institute of International Finance? Like, no, thank you. I'd rather blow my brains out than sit through one of those meetings. But he's the vice chairman of it, right? Something's going on there. They've sort of disguised it by like making it sound as boring as possible. Like the Institute of International Knitting would be more interesting than this. But something tells me that these guys are up to no good at this, so we might want to put somebody in one of these meetings just to see what's going on. But of course, when you are a bazillionaire, like this guy is, like his family is, then one of the things that they really like for you to do, call it a hobby, I don't know, call it a duty, an obligation, but they put you on the board of directors for a lot of companies. And you can, listen, if your only job, if you didn't own any of these companies, but you were just on the board of directors, they pay well. Like you could be on the board of directors at some place where you meet like 6 times a year and you're paid like $300,000, So, I mean, that's not a lot if you're a Wallenberg, these guys are multi-billionaires, but I'm just saying that if somebody asked you to be on the board of directors for some big company, like they pay you a lot of money. So he's on the board of directors for AstraZeneca. Oh, interesting. Really? AstraZeneca, you say? Mm-hmm. Didn't they make? Yeah, they did. Ericsson, telephone company, as they own it, or control it, I should say. He's on the board of Electrolux, as you would suspect. He's on the board of Temesk Holdings, which is Temesk Holdings is like I think it's the Singapore investment fund. I'm almost positive. It's not Singapore, it's Malaysia. It's one of those two. But again, like it'd be like, like on the Saudi Arabia Investment Authority, like the Qatari Investment Authority, the sovereign wealth funds that take a bunch of money and then go spread it around. So he's on the board of directors for Temesk Holdings, which is a big deal. On the board of directors for Saab, or at least he used to be. I think Saab's out of business. And those were cars made in Sweden. I no offense to anybody that's Swedish listening to this, but I have to say that I always thought that they were the ugliest cars in the world. They always look like cockroaches to me, but whatever. They're out of business. Maybe I wasn't the only one. He was on the board of directors, or maybe currently still is on the board of directors of the Kurt and Alice Wallenberg Foundation, as well as a bunch of Swedish companies you've never heard of. I'm not going to get into the weeds of all of that. But just imagine very important Swedish multinational engineering firms, companies, manufacturing firms, shipping company. They're into all of it. And he's on the board of a bunch of those. Okay. So, but you would expect that. And again, if you were a Rockefeller, you'd be on the board of all these companies too. Maybe different companies, but you'd be on the board of 6 or 7 different companies doing all this stuff, keeping an eye on who's going, who's doing what, interlocking boards of directors. Sometimes, you are required, if you've acquired another company, you sit on the board of that company and they send a guy that sits on your board, and you guys kind of like if there's a merger. So sometimes it's almost required that you have an involvement in the board, but you definitely want to. They're the ones that make the decisions on who to hire and fire, who to hire for the CEO position, when to fire the CEO, how to sort of set the guidance for where you want this company to go. The board of directors is heavily involved in that. So if you've got a good board, fantastic. If you've got a woke board that's worried about DEI and shit like that, then you start, having to, bring on people that look a certain way or have a certain characteristic in order to meet a quota. But for the most part, it's not unusual to sit on the board of directors for all these things. So that's not what really bothers me. What really bothers me is that he's also a member of the World Economic Forum Global Leaders for Tomorrow. Global Leaders for Tomorrow is, if you listen to the episode I did on the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders, you'll find that that in 2000, I want to say it was 2000 or maybe it was 2001. No, it was 2003. It broke off and it changed into Young Global Leaders. Before that, from 93 to 2003, I think it was I might be getting my dates wrong, but there was a group called Global Leaders for Tomorrow. It wasn't young. They didn't have the young designation. You didn't have to be under 38 to be a member of this. You just had to be super well connected. So that's like when Bill Gates is a member of the World Economic Forum Global Leaders for Tomorrow. That's the group that Marcus Wallenberg the third, I'm going to call him the third, even though he doesn't go by that, but just to keep things sort of easier for us to understand, he's a member of that group too. That's where you get guys like Jeff Bezos and all the OG World Economic Forum people that were super well connected, very rich, but not necessarily young. Now it's in the last 20 years, it's been that you have to be under 38. So anyway, he's a part of this group, even though he wasn't necessarily young at the time. So we've got Bilderberg, we've got WWF, we've got 1001 Club, we've got the World Economic Forum. So we've got a problem, of course. We've got a family to keep your eye on. He's a member of the International Institute for Strategic Studies. He's a member of the European Roundtable of Industrialists. So I mean, these are sort of like, just groups of well-connected, very powerful business owners, tied in with government, definitely know what's coming, probably making it come your way. So Bilderberg, World Economic Forum, also a member of the Munich Security Conference. So, deep state. And I mentioned the Bilderberg Steering Committee. They're all the Wallenbergs are on that, right? So when your grandpa is friends with the guy that started it, then you basically get this pass. And not just the pass, but you're in like you're kind of like on the board of directors of Bilderberg. You're in the steering committee, right? And that would put Marcus Wallenberg III in with an interesting group in the current incarnation of Bilderberg's steering committee, because get a load of this group. Because the people that are on there right now, these are the people that are picking who they want to be members of Bilderberg. And when you hear the names, you're going to recognize a lot of them. And he's one of them. He'd have been before this episode, he'd have been one of these names that it would have been on the list that I would have never, I'd have been like, I don't know who that guy is, but, I know who Larry Summers is. I know who Bob Zellick is, but I've never heard this Marcus Wallenberg III. Never heard of him. Anyway, you have now. And let's continue with this list on the Bilderberg Steering Committee. We've got Conrad Black. He's a deep Zionist scumbag. We've got John Corzine. You remember John Corzine? You should. MF Global. Does that ring a bell? MF Global, the scammer that bilked, that stole a couple $100 million. He might have even stolen $1 billion from MF Global. Former, I think he was a president or managing director of Goldman Sachs. He was a former New Jersey governor. John Corzine is bad guy. Bad guy. Drag him down to the police station, start interrogating him about what he knows about 9/11 too. David Frum, he's from the George W. Bush administration. I see him on Twitter from time to time. What a shithead he is. Fuck you, David Frum. You're garbage. Alex Karp and Peter Thiel are on this. You may not recognize Alex Karp's name, but you do Peter Thiel, of course. And these two guys combined started a company that you most definitely will recognize called Palantir. Palantir is just straight data mining for the DoD. It is 97% of Palantir's revenue comes from the United States government. Okay, so they're involved. They're Pentagon, Department of Defense, State Department, all that stuff. That's Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. So guys to keep an eye on. They don't have a great reputation, Peter Thiel, PayPal Mafia, 10% stake in Facebook for $500,000. It's seed funding. Made $1 billion on that deal. So he's deeply connected. An interesting component though with Peter Thiel. I feel like I should do a whole episode on him. But he's a gay Republican out of the Bay Area, but deep state. I don't know. He sounds like he needs to work out some of his issues with a therapist. Paul Wolfowitz is on this steering committee of Bilderberg. He's a George W. Bush guy, Zionist. Bob Zellick, same thing. W. These guys are all Project for New American Century, dual U.S. Israeli citizens. They wrote the Rebuilding America's Defenses. The Ziocon, I guess is probably a good way to describe them, faction that was behind 9/11. These guys are all here. They're on the Bilderberg Steering Committee, as well as Henry Kissinger. Same thing. Ziocon guy. Richard Pearl. Same thing. These are all the guys that did 9/11. They're all on the Bilderberg Steering Committee. I wonder what those conversations are like. You know what I mean? So there had to have been. Look, I'm speculating on this, but I don't think it's unreasonable to speculate on this. I kind of joked about, I wonder what the conversation would be at the Bilderberg Steering Committee, like in, say, 2000. But really, what would it be when you've got a room that's filled with, and I didn't even get through the rest of the list, David Rockefeller, Klaus Schwab, Larry Summers, Jacob Wallenberg, the brother of the head. He's the brother of Marcus Wallenberg Jr., the uncle to it'd be his uncle would be Marcus Wallenberg Jr. This guy's the CEO of the Stockholm Eskilda Bank, a Wallenberg member. So again, let me just read this list of the Bilderberg Steering Committee, and then just in the back of your mind think 9/11. Okay, Jacob Wallenberg, like I just mentioned, Larry Summers, Klaus Schwab, David Rockefeller, Richard Pearl, Henry Kissinger, Bob Zellick, Paul Wolfowitz, Alex Karp, and Peter Thiel, though they weren't there for the 9/11 stuff. David Frum, John Corzine, Conrad Black. I wonder what you guys were talking about in the years leading up to 9/11. I wonder. Funny, none of you guys were in the buildings during that. I don't know. This is the group. It's part of the group. It's not the entire group, but this is a part of the group. So, and now it's important. So let's take 9/11 out of the equation. Let's talk about moving forward now, the sorts of steering committee meetings that Peter Thiel and Alex Karp would be in. today. I'm not suggesting they were involved in the 9/11 planning in any way. They weren't even, PayPal hadn't even been sold until 2002. So, but now, what do you suppose they're talking about? Well, at Bilderberg, at the steering, who they're inviting, we know what they're talking about. We don't know the details. They're talking about central bank digital currencies. They're talking about artificial intelligence. They're talking about 15-minute cities. They're talking about climate change in quotes, air quotes, climate change, whatever that means. They're talking about transhumanism, which is code for depopulation. So again, these names you recognize, but there's another name on that list, and it's a Wallenberg. Okay, so get your radar sort of tuned to to be aware that there are people like this out there, and I think, like, I don't know how you guys are, but for me, I could go like a long, long time without hearing anybody, hearing about a certain person, and then somehow, some way, this person's brought to my attention, and I become conscious of who this person is. I don't know every last detail, but they're now on my radar. And then after that moment, then I start to see their name everywhere. And I don't know if it's just that I'm now looking for it, or I now recognize it because it was a name that didn't ring a bell before, but now it does, or whatever. But you may have that same experience with regard to this name. And when I got the email sort of suggesting, hey, like, have you ever taken a look into these people? It's one of those things where now I know I'm going to see this name everywhere. I know that the next time I go and look through a Bilderberg steering committee list and I see a name like Wallenberg, I'm going to know who they are. I'm going to be like, okay. Now, doesn't mean I'm going to crack the mystery or solve any of this stuff. It just means that this is now a name that I've got a little backstory attached to. Like, okay, I know who these guys are now. Not everything that they're up to, of course, but I have an idea. I can work on this. So, but that's no doubt what they're talking about in these meetings. So if you've got a guy that's in charge of Ericsson, running like telephones, the communication services, that's kind of something that's an industry that would have most definitely be involved with central bank digital currencies, 15-minute cities, transhumanism, like the idea that your cell phone maker wouldn't want to be involved in this, for sure. As somebody that owns the second largest appliance company in the world, would they want to know? Yeah. And that you make industrial tools. I mean, all of this would be relevant information. In fact, if you know this is coming, if you're sitting in the meetings knowing that that a decision has been made at some point in the future to implement 15-minute cities, and you run all these industrial companies out there, you now know what to plan for. Companies spend a lot of money to try to see the future and know, what am I going to do? Do we kill off this product line and pivot to something else? Like, where do we think things are going? If we think we know where things are going, we can tailor our approach accordingly. I mean, I'm not even talking about a nefarious way. It's like, if you know what next year's fashion is going to be, you're going to be making, and you make jackets, you're going to be ahead of the curve if you know where things are going. These people, they don't just think they know where things are going. They decide where things are going through the Bilderberg, in general, in the Bilderberg steering committee in particular. So it's not the future, as an unknown. It's just the future that we haven't gotten to yet. And these people are definitely involved in making that future a reality. I will leave you with this, because I think it kind of says it all. When you go, oh, God, I've never heard of these people. God, I do this for a living. You'd think I would know about it. Once I found their family motto, I didn't beat myself up too bad about it. Their family motto is esse non videri, which means to be, not to be seen. Well, we see you. Hey, if you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. You can follow me on Twitter @macroaggressions, on Instagram @macroaggressions podcast. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon.